Save the green tigers! Hello, my name is Tara Mooney and this is the only channel on YouTube where all videos are written and produced by a cow. She couldn't be in the video today because she's getting a lash lift. You know how cows have beautiful long eyelashes but they kind of point down? So yeah, she's just gonna get them lifted up. Anyways, if you like and subscribe, she might appear in the next one. Today's video is about
Greta Thunberg. Greta Thunberg. Greta Thunberg.
Greta Thunberg. I'm so sorry to my Swedish viewers. Do I have any subscriptions in Sweden? Let me know if you're from or in Sweden currently. Although Greta is a climate activist, I will not be talking about climate change in detail. This isn't a video proving that climate change is real because I already assume that my audience are smart enough to know that. What I will be talking about is how Greta Thunberg became a punching bag for grown adults and the tension between them proclaiming that she's a kid who knows nothing and has no business speaking about such matters, whilst also holding her up to scrutiny as if she is an adult. She is an adult now and she has been an adult for nearly a year, but I will be talking about instances before that point and some after she turned 18. Because even though 18-year-olds are legally adults, I would argue that they are still vulnerable and young, and there's still a power dynamic if you're a grown adult arguing with an 18-year-old. These are of course generalizations, and don't get it twisted, I'm not saying 18-year-olds are less intelligent. This isn't an intelligence thing, this is a how comfortable are you in yourself kind of thing. And most of us aren't during our teens, young adulthood. It's just the way the cookie crumbles. That's not to say that by age 25 you'll have shit figured out, because honestly, being an adult is just winging it. You're the same person, but now you just have taxes. Speaking of, I wonder if I can put down Greyhound jumpers as a business expense. Oh, and before I get into the thick of it, I want to talk about today's sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by Wren. No, not the creepy British guy from Pretty Little Liars, but a website where you can calculate your carbon footprint, then offset it by funding a diverse mix of carbon reduction projects like tree planting, mineral weathering, and rainforest protection. By answering a few questions about your lifestyle, you can find out your carbon footprint and how to reduce it. Obviously, no one can reduce their carbon footprint to zero, so you can offset what you have left after reducing. And as someone who lives in London, has a dog, and uses a lot of technology, I know that I could do more as an individual. But because this issue is so far-reaching and mentally and emotionally taxing to keep up with, it's really handy to have guidance on what you can do and be informed on projects you can donate to in order to contribute. Once you sign up to make a monthly contribution to offset your carbon footprint, you receive monthly updates from the projects you support. My favourite project supported by Wren is the Clean Cooking Fuel for Refugees project. So this project is led by Mandulis Energy, and it involves getting waste from farming and transforming it into charcoal briquettes, creating clean energy in the process. And what I love about this project is that, as well as helping the environment, it's helping out the people in the local community. They're also incredibly transparent about how your money is spent. So if you're looking to join a collective action to help tackle climate change and don't know where to start, Wren is a huge help. And if you're not 100% sure yet, check out their Trustpilot reviews because they're great. And thank you so much for sponsoring today's video, Wren. Not that one, that one. Before we get into how people talk about Greta Thunberg, let's first talk about her villain origin story. The legend of Greta.
Greta Thunberg
was born in 2003 in Stockholm, Sweden. She's the daughter of opera singer Malina Ernman and actor, oh goodness, Svante Thunberg. Her paternal grandfather was Olaf Thunberg, best known as the voice actor for Bamse, the world's strongest bear. I don't want to be negative, but I somehow don't believe that. Greta shared how she first heard about climate change in 2011. She was 8 at the time, and the situation made her depressed. She was later diagnosed with AS, OCD, and SM, which she shared in her viral TEDx talk. And I only mention her medical history because she's very open about it, and unfortunately it is used against her, which I'll get to later. Her activism started on a microcosmic level, first by challenging her parents to lower the family's carbon footprint by going vegan, upcycling, and giving up flying. She said in an interview that she tried showing them graphs and data, but when that didn't work, she warned her family that they were stealing her future, and that's what got them listening. So once her family got on board, in August 2018, Greta began the school climate strikes. She first got the idea of a climate strike after school shootings in the US in February of 2018 led to several young people refusing to go back to school and the March for Our Lives events that followed. Her demands were that the Swedish government reduce carbon emissions in accordance with the Paris Agreement, and she protested by sitting outside the Riksdag every day for 3 weeks. She posted a photo of her first strike day and boom boom baby, a star is born. She inspired students across the globe to take part in student strikes. In December of 2018, more than 20,000 students had held strikes in at least 270 cities. She ended up giving a speech at the 2018 United Nations Climate Change Conference, which went viral. Then, at the 2019 World Economic Forum, and to top it all off, she met the Pope. She then took a sabbatical from school and travelled the world by boat to give speeches. And once her sabbatical ended, the Panasonic hit, so her activism then went virtual. So that's a condensed biography of Greta so far. As I mentioned earlier, I'm not going to get into the weeds of her ideological positions, because this video is more about how we treat youth activists than the youth activists themselves. What I will say is, wow, good on her. Incredibly admirable, and I don't know how she does it, quite frankly, because people are shitty, and they've been particularly shitty to her, and weird. So very weird. Let's get the weird shit out the way.
I simply don't get the Thunberg phenomenon. She has no knowledge of how the world works, no manners, and no letters after her name, because instead of going to school, she's been busy sailing round the world so she can be mardy and abusive to grown-ups. What she needs is a smacked bottom.
Bolshe Greta so reminds me of my wife. I am no sort of deep green eco-warrior, but even so, I won't hear a word said against Greta Thunberg. I admire the girl, or rather woman, as she is now at the ripe old age of 18. I could watch her grumpy little face and nod along with her grumpy ABBA-accented hectoring all day. Why, I asked myself the other day, do I not only applaud Greta, but also feel protective towards her? I thought it might be that she reminds me of my daughter, and she does, a little bit. They're both blonde and of a similar age. But Greta is grumpier than my daughter, and smaller, and far less inclined to compromise, and super determined, and straight-talking, and a perfectionist, and not inclined to let those of us with less energy or certainty off the hook. And that's when I realized she actually reminds me of my wife. Both my wife as she is now at 57, and my wife when she was 15. Greta's age when she became famous, and we were at school together. I guess I must be predisposed to idolize small, bossy, fearless blonde... I guess I must be predisposed to idolize small, bossy, fearless blondes, and seek to protect them too, although both would recoil at the idea of requiring any protection. I'm concerned at the moment, for instance, that Greta is getting too thin. What?
Liberals insist that a child like Greta Thunberg has the autonomy or agency to tour the world agitating for political change. I don't see how they can argue that 12-year-olds are politically mature yet at the same time lack the capacity to meaningfully consent to sexual activity.
Not even being provocative, but if you think Greta Thunberg has the maturity to guide global policymaking, then you cannot object to Jeffrey Epstein paying 16-year-olds for sex.
You know what? I think I'm done with this whole internet.com thing. I'm out. I quit. Moving on. Category is Culture wars. Greta has become the boogeyman to climate deniers, especially online. People are really pressed by her. And it isn't just losers in the YouTube comments, it's losers who make a living online.
You have disappointed Greta. Greta's disappointed in you.
How dare you!
It's because the climate hysteria movement is not about science. If it were about science, it would be led by scientists rather than by politicians and a mentally ill Swedish child who is being exploited by her parents.
Hey, I actually originally wrote a whole section addressing the ableism that Greta gets. And you know what? I'm just gonna say this. I don't even want to dignify this guy or any of the pundits who on national television have made ableist remarks. To cut a long story short, being neurodivergent and or mentally ill does not make you lesser than and does not invalidate your argument. Anyone who tries to use that in an argument against you is just being ableist. So fuck them. I don't want to give them the time of day.
The way Greta is treated is reminiscent of how the right wing online and the right wing media treated and attacked David Hogg. David Hogg is a survivor of the Parkland shooting and a gun control activist who played a prominent role in the March for Our Lives rallies. And boy, did he make the gun nuts angry.
Forgive me if I don't want a lesson on the Second Amendment from a 16-year-old.
What a conceited, arrogant, know-it-all.
Hogg is funded by George Soros, a literal Nazi collaborator.
If you're too immature to carry a firearm, you're too immature to make policy.
So, on the one hand, they argue that these kids are too young to know about the issues, but they take them seriously enough to critique them and even attack them. So, which is it? And listen, I'm not a civility politics person. I think it's fair game to goof on your opponent. That's literally what I do. But I think it's different when you're dealing with minors and even young adults. And this is where I'm conflicted. On the one hand, I think that obviously we shouldn't hold 16-year-olds to the same standards as adults because their brains aren't fully developed and they haven't yet come into their own. I was a completely different person at 18. I said stuff like, do I even want to share this? I would say things like, this is why I'm not friends with girls. They're too much drama. Like the boys treated me any better. Ew! But on the flip side, that's not to say that young people aren't intelligent and able to engage with social and political issues. And especially, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't take them seriously. This stuff affects them too. And when it comes to certain issues, these things are even more important to them. To dismiss a young person's argument because they're young and haven't had enough life experience implies that you don't see them as an autonomous person. It's that same kind of mindset that some parents have where they see their children as their property as opposed to fully fledged people. So she's mature enough to make decisions about global policy, but just a child who is too young to be criticized? No. She's not making decisions about global policy. The point of the Fridays for Future movement wasn't so that kids can be in charge, but to ask world leaders, the people that are in charge, to do something. Why is it so hard to understand? People are just asking that world leaders treat this issue with the urgency it demands. Because Greta has become the symbol for environmental activism, for some people anyway, they spend their time criticizing her as opposed to focusing on the issue itself, the actual issue of climate change. And to be honest, this goes for people who support, or at least claim to support, Greta. Liberal media does this a lot, where they use someone as a mascot for an issue and they report on them endlessly to signal that they care about the issue. But they don't actually care enough to act upon what that person represents. They're like, oh, look at this young person campaigning against climate change. Isn't that so cute? When people say shit like, the children are our future. Oh, this issue is going to be fine because our kids are so smart and they'll deal with it. Greta literally addresses this in her speeches. She says that she finds that infuriating.
You all come to us young people for hope. How dare you? You say you hear us and that you understand the urgency. They also rely on my generation sucking hundreds of billions of tons of your CO2 out of the air with technologies that barely exist.
People always tell us that young people are going to save the world. There is simply not enough time to wait.
Because we don't have time to wait for her generation to deal with this issue. So much damage has already been done. We gotta get on this. Pronto. It's very much passing the buck. I think that's the saying, right? See, I really care about climate change, but you know what? Greta's got this. She'll do this better than I do. You don't give a shit! So when world leaders meet with Greta and they shake her hands, they're just trying to signal that they care about climate change. But if they actually cared, they'd be doing what she's asking them to do. But they aren't. And it's infuriating. And she said this recently about COP26.
This is no longer a climate conference. This is now a Global North Greenwash Festival. 2-week-long celebration of business as usual and blah, blah, blah.
It's a mere PR stunt because actually changing policy on climate change and changing the economy takes work. And this isn't to undermine how meaningful her work is. She has had an amazing effect. She's inspired so many young people to get politically active. And that in itself is a huge victory. No one can blame her or any activists, for world leaders not acting on climate change. Because if climate scientists saying we need to hurry the fuck up, this is really, really bad, if that doesn't convince them, I don't think anyone can. Hello, I just wanted to add a book recommendation, and it is On Fire, The Burning Case for a Green New Deal by Naomi Klein. And the first way that the book is very informative is that it sort of lays out why this situation is so urgent and what climate scientists have been saying and are currently saying and what the reaction to that has been. And secondly, it talks about the role of economics in creating this situation, but also how it can be used to respond to this situation, hence the burning case for a Green New Deal. And it's a great introduction to green economics. So yeah, check it out. I would really recommend it. Because of how we live in a celebrity culture, didn't really know what else to call it, but you know what I mean. Activists have kind of become celebrities, which is kind of weird to me. It's not necessarily bad. I mean, making activism aspirational is good in some ways. Having visible youth activists brings to light that young people do care about world issues and can intelligently engage with the world around them. And I don't know if you ever heard this when you were younger, but I every now and then I'd hear adults saying things like, oh, you just all want to be pop stars and put on makeup, which there's nothing wrong with those things anyway, but anyway, you don't want to be doctors and lawyers and shit. It's a very boomer thing to say, right? Bill my hair.
You may be the conscience of your generation, but you don't represent it.
Avocado toast.
But the lure around Greta challenges that narrative. But celebrification, or whatever you want to call it, kind of undermines the work that activists do. And this is doubly the case with the celebrification of politicians. Politicians should not be seen as celebrities. They're public servants with immense power, and they can make or break people's lives. They're so much more than just cultural figures. Another problem I have with making people poster children for political issues is that it leads to people individualizing these issues. Let me explain. People start to see an individual politician or activist as responsible for said issue, rather than seeing it as structural. An example of this is AOC, who became the poster girl for democratic socialism in the US. What she was talking about was more social democracy anyway, but I digress. Because AOC brought so much hope and a more progressive outlook, people seem to forget that she was a politician. And politicians often do and support things that they may not personally believe in because it is their job to serve their constituents, right? Oh yeah, just wanted to add, because I think I was a little bit too generous to politicians, they also lie. There's that.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry.
So when AOC didn't deliver on this democratic socialist revolution that people were expecting, they were disappointed. When it's like, she wasn't ever the revolution. She's just one person, a politician. This is a movement that takes collective action. To expect that to be brought by electing one person is silly billy stuff. And obviously, I'm oversimplifying this to be concise. And I'm not talking about people criticizing her, any of her decisions, that kind of thing. Like, we should be constantly criticizing and evaluating our politicians. What I'm talking about is the fandom around her, where people were expecting her to bring about this socialist revolution, which was misguided, in my opinion, because that was never going to be the case. I just think that when you put so much symbolism behind an individual person and you make them the figurehead for a whole ideology or movement, you're going to end up disappointed, inevitably. But on a brighter note, let's appreciate the fact that despite all the shit she gets, Greta takes it in her stride.
Blah 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 blue blah blah blue blah blue bee.
Oh, so good on her. Couldn't be me. And to keep on a high, let's look at today's subscription pet shout-out. Oh, this girl is so gorgeous, I cannot deal. This is the Majestic Marbles. She is a 7-year-old calico cat from Canada who wears pearls. Oh, she's so chic. She has 2 brothers called Miko and Magic, and they have an Instagram page. So go show them some love and give them a round of applause. Woo! And if you liked this video, make sure to give it a like, because 1 like equals 1 pearl necklace for a gorgeous kitty. And if you haven't already, make sure to check out Mine and the Cow's podcast, Grazing Hell. Latest episode was with Anna Marie Forcino and Kunkan Dasna, and we played a game called Know Your Alpha. And I mean, it's what it sounds like. We talked about alpha males for an hour. It was painful, but also very funny, so go check it out. It's a lot of fun. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. Dog bless. Extra thank you to my patrons, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye. Bye-bye now. Bye-bye. Bye-bye now. Bye-bye.